Welcome to GCE 202, Guidance Through Groups, Study Session 1, General Introduction to Group. Introduction to the course. Guidance Through Groups is a course designed as an introductory experience for preparing students to work with various groups. The course forms the foundation for the understanding of group processes and acquisition of basic skills in human relations, effective communication, and overall leadership skills necessary for working with various groups. The course provides little understanding of the need for and importance of various group activities and interaction, participation in ongoing group experience by group members, and provides for self-growth and development. The course also introduces you to various group formations and patterns. It is essential that human organism, being a social animal, should be looked at not only in terms of his individual normal physical, psychological, and social functions, but also in relation to the various groups to which he belongs. Introduction. Human beings have always functioned in groups. The most basic human group is the family, centered around the pairing of a male and female for the purpose of procreation and raising children. This pairing forms the nuclear family, which soon becomes linked to the other pairs through a network of relationships between siblings through several generations, thus creating an extended family. In this study session, you'll be exposed to the concepts of groups, differences between traditional and modern view of man, and the approaches to group study. Learning outcomes. At the end of this study session, you should be able to 1. Explain the concepts of groups. 2. Differentiate between traditional and modern view of man. 3. Highlight the approaches to group study. The concept of group. We hear about groups of every kind more often in everyday life than about the individual who make up the group. For example, in the news media, we hear ourselves being referred to in terms of a variety of aggregates, such as consumers, the public, the young, school children, mothers, the affluent, the poor, and so on. Throughout life, people belong to one or more groups at a time. In the school setting, for instance, a student may belong to one or more student groups such as discussion group, drama, and debating societies, a social club, or students' political group, etc. This occurs because human beings do not live in isolation from others. Man by nature is a social being and thus never exists alone. At home, the man is in the company of his family. At work, in the church, at the market, in the classroom, on the playground, in the library, name it, man is in one form of group or the other. Since man does not live in isolation from other people, the various groups with which he functions influence his life, and he, on the other hand, influences his group. Group life is very pervasive. The individual human being is created by a group and remains under the influence of innumerable groups from the time of birth until the time of death. Even from the moment of conception, the biological being about to become an individual is hardly ever alone. In the womb, the fetus forms a strong physical bond with the mother. Life depends on her body. After birth, one's survival depends on a group, usually the immediate family. The groups take to the child's development as a human being, as well as his physical survival, depends on a continued interaction with other people. The groups are strong agents of socialization. Young children belong to a group of playmates. Later, they form friendship groups of schools and then at work. Finally, they may be a member of a family of their own creation and their children, if they have any. They repeat the cycle of maturation and socialization through group interaction. Throughout life, people belong to temporary and permanent groups organized to achieve specific or general goals. The kind of people they become depends greatly on the groups to which they belong and on the quality of relationship these groups provide. There is nothing like a total individual, for no one lives totally alone all his life. However, there may be people who live alone because of one reason or the other, such as prisoners confined to a special cell where they remain totally alone, delinquent children in remand homes, or old people neglected by their children. Isolation is universally considered as an extreme punishment, and it can be a brutalizing experience. When people seek isolation voluntarily, they are usually pursuing some ideological principle such as monks or hermits, or they are symbolically rejecting society. However, isolation has never been considered a natural way of life. The importance of groups in every society suggests the extent to which we need one another. In no part of the world do people live absolutely alone by choice. When Lindemann, 1924, said that modern life is a group life, he was confirming the 20th century view of man as a social interactant shaped by the conditions of group life. Traditional versus modern view of man. Traditionally, before the 20th century, man had been viewed as an individual or an isolated unit of society, and only incidentally a member of the groups within the society. This traditional view of man and society gave rise to classic descriptions for the various forms of society or political organizations. All these formulations were based upon assumptions about the nature of man and the inherent structure of society. It was assumed that there are only two major variables, man and society. Groups, for example the family, were fixed and played little part in the theorizing prior to the 19th century. The traditional view did not see man's behavior as being influenced by groups in the society. However, this view gradually gave way to the view of groups as society. Modern sociologists and psychologists, focusing on man's behavior rather than his inherent nature, have found that it is the primary or informal groups that are the fabrics of man's daily life. They are shapers of man's values and attitudes. These informal small groups are now recognized as the mechanisms of socialization. Societies are seen as a maze of interlocking and overlapping groups in which the individual plays various roles. The study of man and his group has developed at ever-emerging pace since the earlier part of this century, when John Dewey recognized that the child could not be truly educated apart from the groups which formed his immediate world. Psychologists such as Floyd Allport found that experiments with an individual's behavior were always influenced by the groups to which the subject belonged. Approaches to group study. The rapid growth of a psychology of groups had developed along two tracks: the political practical approach and the theoretical experimental approach. The political practical approach. This approach focused on means and methods of improving group processes. It operates on the assumption that these would in turn improve society. The approach has led to a concern for the processes by which democratic decisions are made, how democratic leadership can be improved, how individual participation can be enhanced, and the need for improving communication within groups. The practitioners of group process have produced an ever-growing array of techniques for understanding and improving groups. They are reasonable. Take two. They are responsible for the new widely known practices of role-playing, feedback, brainstorming, buzz discussions, tea groups, encounter groups, and sensitivity groups. This approach also produced the group discussion movements in schools, colleges, the community, and the business world. These are designed to increase the individual's ability in groups and in turn to make groups more effective contributors to a democratic society. Subsequently, group techniques are now widely applied to the improvement of the individual and his intrapersonal communication. This is achieved by helping the individual to explore his self-image and to sensitize him to his own feelings and that of others. In this way, the structure of group processes has come full circle and is used not only to help the group function more effectively as a contributor to the socio-political system, but to also become a source for and means for enhancing the life of the individual. The theoretical experimental approach. This approach is more recent and is inextricably tied to the growth of the social sciences. Its roots lie in the movement which has produced the sciences of human behavior such as psychology, sociology, and anthropology. It is a part of the tradition which holds that man's behavior and social interactions can be subjected to scientific investigation equally as well as can natural and biological phenomena. Thus, the 20th century social psychologists brought man into the laboratory and developed the techniques of scientific research and statistical measurement, which eventually led to the experimental study of groups. The contributors to the theoretical experimental approach to group study are seeking a theory of human behavior based upon scientific experimentation. For the most part, they are behavioral scientists who are more concerned with theoretical research than with finding practical answers to the improvement of group functioning. Summary of study session. In this study session, you have learned that 1. People belong to various types of groups which are either socially, educationally, politically, or psychologically oriented, all of which influence man's behavior, attitudes, and values. 2. Group is seen as an agent of socialization in the society. 3. The rapid growth of a psychology of groups had developed along two tracks. The political practical approach to group study is interested in finding methods of improving group processes, which in turn will improve the society. The theoretical experimental approach consists of behavioral scientists who are more concerned with the theoretical research than with finding practical answers to the improvement of group functioning. We have come to the end of study session 1. Thanks for listening.